meeting of September 3rd to order at 6:04 p.m. This agenda, is subject to change and includes those items reasonably anticipated by the chair to be discussed at the meeting. Not all agenda items may be in fact discussed, and other items not listed may also be brought up for discussion to the extent extent prohibited. I can't talk tonight, it's gonna be a long night, by law. We have nobody else here, so nobody's recording the meeting except for us on WACA-TV. Nobody's here for citizens' participation. Mark, you are up.
Wow, that was quick.
I'm sorry.
Budget
review.
The other Mark.
Yeah, true. So anyways, item number 3. That's the FY 2021 budget review and preparation. Part of our discussion at the last meeting in August was that Diane and I would meet with the town manager, which we have done, and we discussed, and chime in when you want, Diane, we discussed various concepts that we've looked at through the years, including regionalization. So, as the board has been made aware, we're presently discussing regionalization on our program related to the public health nurse program. And I think that's the wish of the town manager to pursue that. So, in all respects, it would probably be more comprehensive working with a larger department, which would be the City of Framingham's department. So, but at the same time, we haven't finalized any negotiations. We being the town manager, he still needs to talk to the various officials in Framingham to determine cost, services, and so forth. So it's kind of moving, and it's in progress, but we'll be relying on further information from the town manager, Diane. So that's that side of it. And then we started discussing the health agent side, the assistant health agent. A couple things came up. One was the fiscal status of the town. The fiscal status right now is not leaning towards any positions of assistant health agent, which is understandable. That's why we had the discussion with the town manager, so we're not going through the motions like we did last year with all the different, I look at Ron because he provided some helpful hints on how to go through the various information that we received through data review. And at the same time, regionalization came up again, that maybe as it relates to food inspections, that's a possibility. I told him that the town of Hopkinton, when I was in discussion with them for something else last week, they indicated they lost their food inspector. So there's that chance that the food inspectional program may be a consideration for regionalization. So discussion was also taking place on how much money we have in the revolving fund and if the fees need to be raised or not, to look at comparable towns, which is the next agenda item. So ultimately, as we ended the meeting, I said, so this probably won't be the year then that I suggest a full-time public health agent. He said that is correct. So I leave that with the board for your consideration. I respect what's happening in the town at this present time. And did I fill everything in?
Yeah, the only thing I really wanted to add is we have not heard back from the City of Framingham. They were meeting with a couple of other communities before having all of the communities sit down to talk about regionalization of the nursing services. So we're still waiting for them. I did go to the open house at their clinic in downtown Framingham, which is really very, very nice, and they announced that it was the first one in the state of Massachusetts. So, but it's very nice, and anyhow, they had just not, they're busy with that, so they hadn't communicated with those other towns yet. So, and just to add to that, like Mark was saying, is we were talking to Michael also about reviewing our fee schedule, and in the past we've always gone to management to make sure we're all, we're increasing fees collectively. And he wasn't sure that this would be the appropriate year as well. A lot of the establishment, as well as residents, got hit with the stormwater fee this year. They are looking at some other fee increases, maybe minimally, to the establishments or the residents. But So we told them we would look at the fee schedule and see what the fee schedule looks like compared to other communities, and then see where we're at. Because like Mark said, depending on what our funding source is for food, tobacco, just new revenue in general, will help us to know what we can do with other communities for regionalization. So it's leaning towards that. It's just a little bit probably slower process, but I think we just want to make sure we didn't do a lot of work and have, spinning our wheels, so.
Yeah, I mean, it's great to have the kind of feedback as to whether or not we should look at increasing fees or not, but I think we should always review them
Absolutely.
on a very regular basis. Although I just took a quick peek at them, and I think we're on the higher side.
Well, that's what we haven't looked at them a while, and it's just, and like we spoke to Michael, said we don't know, we haven't looked at them
Yeah.
collectively, so we'll let him know where our fees stand, because then
Yeah.
he'll know where we are
Yeah.
with our budgetary, items
Sure.
for regionalization, because obviously if we regionalize, we'll need the money that we're taking in as well as the money that's budgeted
Sure.
to pay for the regional services. So it is a moving pieces, but.
Was there any discussion to get Mark even a little bit more help with more hours for part-time food other than regionalization? Because that doesn't seem like that's going to occur anytime soon, and you still have an immediate need.
I think what we discussed, and I think the board discussed it as well, is we would love to have more hours.
Right.
The current staff is not allowed to do those hours. We probably would have an issue if, let's say we added 10 or 15 hours, finding a secondary person. So again, with this process, we're hoping that takes off maybe right away.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, we collectively could increase those hours, but the staff that we currently have is not able to fill those, so.
So Tom can't.
Well,
Right.
we brought up priority inspections, switching it off a little bit, where we already have priority inspections in place. And the state just changed the requirement for who gets licensed. So if you sell packaged potato chips and products of that nature, and that's not your main business, then you don't even need a license anymore. And we actually passed a regulation, it had to be 10 years ago, based on priority inspections of food facilities. So right now, we don't inspect the smaller convenience stores twice a year. We do them once a year. And we also discussed, and it's been on, I think we discussed it here at the last meeting, getting a third inspection in for larger restaurants, schools, as well as third inspection for nursing homes, high risk, and larger facilities such as retail, grocery stores, what come to mind.
Anyway, more people attend, I think you need to obviously do it because it's safer for additional inspections, so it's better for that.
Yeah.
Well, if
If you
I'm
have a
correct,
large
we
group
did
attending
increase,
and
Tom,
anything happens,
the
there's
staff's
more people
hours, right?
affected.
Yeah,
so
Tom's doing additional
I
hours
think
than
it's
what
up
he
to
originally
15,
did.
right?
Yeah, about that.
Yeah,
which is
I know we
12 to
increased
15.
his hours, current
Yeah,
staff
but
hours, but.
if we do need to have it, do we have
Yeah.
provision to do it if the
Right.
money is available for us?
Well, and it's something to consider as well, as, I mean, if we have the option of, we're doing nursing services, clearly we're talking now, but maybe the next discussion would be food, because it's a priority.
But
I mean, I'm not, trying to
right,
take away from Mark's situation, but I mean, maybe that's our
Yeah.
next discussion versus,
in that regard, I
Maybe it'll
I
come
think the
together.
data would help from Mark or Laura, whoever is working on it. I know that years back, we used to send a report every year, a one-page report to the DPH. So if you can prepare one for us, even if you don't have the form, just white out the old form and put the same data for a different year and let us know. At least we have some kind of a gauge to measure and then say, hey, yes,
Right.
we need it or we don't need it, we can do. And I've done part of the analysis about a year and a half back with Ron. And same sheets could be used to see how we progress from that place to now.
right,
And then that gives a better handling on it to say, yes, we are short of numbers here and not numbers there, so that'd be better.
well, I mean,
We can quantify it.
if we had the funding, coming in, it would be nice to have more hours than we even have now. But, and I think we should keep it on the agenda
I think so.
and talk
I-
about it,
I- yeah.
because, we.
I keep saying that we're getting more meal stacks than what we are doing it, so we need to get a share all the time. Well, it's more than $200,000, and our
Well-
budget is $160.
Well,
In our small town, we make 200,000 in meals tax, and it goes back to the town from the state?
General fund.
And where does it go?
General fund,
So-
supposed to, by law.
By law. And can the general, not knowing how this works, can the general fund then allocate some to the Board of Health?
Of course, the town can do whatever it wants with the general fund.
So our operating budget that, I'll just say our salaries, administration, that's considered the general fund.
Okay.
Our tobacco and food are revolving funds, so those are
Okay.
I
totally
mean,
separate.
that's established to safeguard, to make sure in situations where you don't have fund, you don't want to lose this inspection process. That's why that funding was instituted to safeguard it. But it doesn't mean that we cannot take it from outside.
So,
Does not mean that.
so the fees that are collected, that we're talking about,
Yep.
go into the revolving fund.
Correct.
And from the revolving fund, we pay for these inspections.
For the
So,
salary.
and the salary of the person who does the inspections. So, year to year, has this fully funded as many times as we should go to each establishment?
We're meeting the minimum requirement?
The user fee is paying for those inspections, and actually, we have a surplus in there, so that's why another possibility would be utilizing more hours, possibly with someone else, possibly a regional inspector that, say
So-
if Hopkinton needs some.
I know they do,
I'll
but
end it there.
if,
Sorry.
no, cause I just don't wanna lose my train of thought.
Yep.
So, without talking about the regional, right now, so you said we have a surplus. Is it a
Yes.
big surplus that we could be doing more inspections and keeping,
I'd have to, don't have the
and-
numbers right in front
and
of me.
doing more than the minimum?
You know what, I think,
Food inspection.
I guess that's
no, but
what
I think you're probably
I don't
bringing
have
up where I'm thinking as well, is
I
that
have it in my other
if we
stuff.
have the money there may be, let's just say somebody from Hopkinton, who is a current food inspector that might wanna pick up
Yeah,
5 extra hours a
unfortunately, they
week or
don't have
something.
it.
I think
I don't know how
what
they-
we originally were thinking is if we had
Okay.
2 part-time inspectors,
Just
Yeah.
looking for the
might
difference
not be
between
as
what's
attractive
in the
versus
full
maybe
fee.
a full-time inspector.
Okay,
So I think we could see if we could get an additional inspector, if that makes sense.
because the one that we have can only work so many hours?
Correct.
Okay. So is he
Just
work,
for the, just for the record, he has a full-time job, I mean,
okay,
he's doing this part-time for us.
There's certain advantage
By
with
July 16th.
additional part-times, because you may not
Yeah, I
have
think
to
you're
pay
over here.
all the
There you
benefits
go.
that
Thank you.
right,
comes to the
right,
expenses
I
less.
understand
Shout
that.
to them.
The other thing is if you have another part-timer, then you have 3 people, so that one person goes on vacation, he can fill in
Yeah.
easily, so that we are able to inspect it when we need it, or when we need somebody is available.
So have we ever tried to advertise, do you advertise for that position, a part-time health inspector kind of position?
We,
We could.
maybe if,
Like, if we have
Just-
money left over and we're only meeting minimum, I'm like, I have a thing about nursing homes, I want them over investigated.
well, the priority ones,
Yeah,
the priority ones should,
based on what
well,
we
I
know.
guess what we can ask Mark to do then for us is let us, look into it, cause,
Yeah, that's
I
why
have the
that
figures.
data would help, because I
As
can
of
pull
the-
that things
Oh, yeah,
together.
okay, you do have it.
As
I'm
of the
sorry.
year we had it in a Z drive.
okay.
We had, at the end of the fiscal year, we had $39,251.50 available. We use around 22 to 23,000 a year, so there's a
So what happened to
surplus.
that 39, then we lose it?
We
No,
don't
no,
lose it.
rolls over.
We don't lose it, rolls
That's why it's
over.
put in the revolving account,
Okay,
it's meant for us, nobody else can touch it.
so we spent 23 and we had 39 left over.
We have 39
Sounds
left.
like we could hire somebody else.
No, right, and just remember, because we might have a little bit of money that comes in throughout the year, but the big bulk of our money comes in for permit renewal season, so
Okay,
in
when's that?
November.
November.
So, we've asked Tom, right, we increased Tom's hours to 15, is that correct?
We were trying to get it more, but he just can only do so much
He's doing
time.
15 right now, right?
Average of 12 to 15.
Make sure that he doesn't overwork and then fatigue himself.
Well, and that's the
So
other
we
thing.
want to have a good inspection
Is
at the
there a
time.
way to, do we have to put in the budget that we want another part-time person?
You would need to do that, and the town would be hiring another part-time
But it
person, so we'd
Wouldn't
have to
go in the
get
budget,
Lisa.
it would come out of our revolving, so
It would
wouldn't
come
go
out of
in-
revolving, but
Yeah.
hiring-wise, it would go under Lisa, you.
I know everybody uses this revolving door as if it's a revolver, it is not a revolver, it is meant there to safeguard our money. That means if the town ever goes down with their revenues, we still have money to pay for these inspections.
Well, and
That's why it was
and it's-
safeguarded, meant
it's
for that
the
purpose.
fees are to cover the
It
cost of the
does not mean
service.
that we are limited to take only from there. We can always ask for more money from outside. So, I know the history now, because I didn't know the history 2 years ago.
So I don't think it's a bad idea to see if our if we can afford to have more hours, I think we should definitely pursue it.
Absolutely, positively.
So, well,
That's what they're paying the fees for, that's what keeps the people safe. I don't know why we haven't been.
well, we did, well, obviously, I mean, I
Yeah,
think
had
since you were here, I
somebody
think we increased his hours.
Okay.
Currently to make sure we were gonna be covered. But I guess it would have to be,
Add additional part-timer possibly to enhance the program.
so
Yeah.
do you wanna have Mark work with the HR director to see and just
I think so.
do budgetary and then
Yeah,
do
I think
a,
we should look at how many hours a week we can afford. And then, you know, I mean, it should be practical, right? I don't think someone wants to work 6 hours a week, but if we can afford 10 hours a week, which seems like we could with that number, and put an ad
additional,
out there.
right,
Yeah,
right, okay.
I mean, put an ad out there.
And
that
it
shows
could
it.
lead into a regional partnership.
right,
Hopkinton might be looking at 10 hours, Worth might be looking at 10 hours, Holliston might be looking at,
Well,
could be a regional well, Holliston has their part-time inspectors, so they're okay down there.
would it be beneficial to reach out to Framingham before? we
Maybe
do-
Holliston's
Framingham.
part-time inspector wants
I
some
didn't
more
talk to him
hours.
about a nurse,
Yeah,
like
he
when we
left,
met, we
she
talked,
left, I
we,
know.
we didn't,
I'm
so,
just thinking, you know,
Framingham?
that I really love the idea of the nurse and the, other services like the vaccinate, you know, being regionalized. I don't see how we're gonna regionalize in Framingham on this and then regionalize with Hopkinton
Right,
on that.
right.
Who's gonna manage all that? I think probably right now to just talk about our things, that I'd rather just say, we definitely have the funds from the fees, and there's been some incidents where things could have been looked at more frequently that weren't, for whatever reason, and maybe we can catch things faster.
Right.
Yeah, but if you do get to a chance where we need to advertise and get it, make sure it is for weekends primarily.
Well, but,
Because that's when we don't have a service right now for Sunday. I know that Saturday sometimes Tom covers it, Sunday we have nobody covered. And Sundays and Saturdays and Fridays are the time periods when
Right.
the restaurants are.
and maybe if we I don't know if you wanna reach out to Framingham or I can, but, I mean, maybe we should start with them to see, I mean, maybe they have a part-time inspector who wants to have part-time hours. Again, just thinking about the regionalization, cause like you said, I mean, we don't wanna have an agreement with Framingham for this and Holliston for this, and
Right.
so maybe if we just kind of see what's out there, to see if we can
Mhm.
pull from our
Yeah, put
resources.
feelers out
And
there.
don't, maybe not do a regional, just hire somebody part-time.
Part-time, yeah, I
And
think
because
that's
we
all
don't
it
know,
needs.
we don't know if
Yeah.
it's gonna be 6 months, or we don't really know, for all of what we're discussing
Right.
now. It might go quicker, hopefully, but,
Right.
so maybe just do like a feeler, just to see what's out there for the
Yeah,
regional
sure.
towns, see if there's
Yeah.
somebody part-time that's, and then,
I think that there's a definite benefit to make use of that money in this way now. Because we could get to a point where money is tight, and then they say, well, you know, you keep having this surplus, you've over budgeted, we're gonna take that back. That could happen in the future. We can prevent that by utilizing the money and showing that we're using it.
Providing the
and I
service.
understand the
properly.
concept, but I believe,
Yeah.
don't
Uh-huh.
hold me to it, but I believe you have to go to town meeting to take money out of the account,
You-
which isn't
well, you have
isn't
to change-
impossible.
Yeah, you have to change the funding to, I think it's called zero-based funding, and that's where at the end of every fiscal year, everything goes to zero,
Right.
and they start from
Right.
scratch, because we changed that to that.
Yeah, but I agree, I know we've been trying to, I mean, it's a
But-
priority.
Before I lose the thought, whenever you get your budget papers every time, can you put those balances from those revolving accounts as a separate line item so that we know every time when we get these?
Well, they're on the Munis system. We talked about Munis before, how you can't change too much,
You know,
but
that's fine, but
but
you,
it says
you know that
available
you
with-
found out
we-
somewhere like this,
Well, you
so
could,
she can
Well-
type an extra line on it.
you can export it into Excel.
yeah, and it's right here anyways, it's right at available budget. They're all line
So what are you
items.
looking for,
Just those numbers so that we know, because we don't have to go back and look for it every time and ask for it. So if it is there,
Yeah, we'll-
circle
what-
that.
what we'll
That is
do
available.
We can provide it.
Oh,
with
you're
this.
talking about
Money
for
in
the
the
revolving
revolving
account,
account, what is left
yeah.
over.
So, yeah, I was gonna say, so we do
That way we don't
have.
consciously think, oh, we have money or we have no money. We have to look
Right
at it.
here, Mark, I think.
some reason.
Right here. You have it.
But the available budget for food is incorrect based on this one here. I think they're not showing the other line item, the 5831.
Yeah, because this is only what's going out, not what's coming in. Okay, yeah, so we can, and,
Get that updated.
so yeah, we can have Mark or Laura update that and get that too.
Make
Right, you
sure
can-
these numbers are accurate, cause it definitely shows a reduction here. It shows on this report, which was, the end of the fiscal year, something a little different. It definitely doesn't show in this account, so we'll have to find out if
And you know
it
what,
didn't
just,
carry.
I think the other, I think I know the answer, because we haven't rolled over the year, the July first year, I think that's why it's
Thank
not.
you, Diane, 'cause
I
said,
believe that's why
"Where's
it's
that
not
money?"
showing KG, but,
Did not
but
roll
maybe,
over.
maybe if we just get KG last year, so he'll see
Yeah.
yeah, that's actually why, I'm sorry.
No good.
I'm looking
You
at it, I'm
just
like, it
had me
looks
nervous
correct.
too. I'm like, okay, where is it? Thank you.
All right, so do we wanna take a quick peek at the fee schedule? Mark, you did,
Laura did all the work.
thank you.
Thank you,
She
Laura.
grabbed,
So
various
ours
towns.
and-
I think we look good.
Yeah, I don't know that we can up them.
Yeah. I don't
Some of the
think-
you'll notice some of the, like a large facility, I think it might have been
Yeah, like I said, I don't know that we
Framingham or
should be,
Westboro.
Yeah,
maybe we shouldn't have this.
we shouldn't bust a bubble.
But did you say, I'm going back to this Munis report, did you say that that was on here, that it was printed?
Well, it didn't roll over yet.
Okay.
So what, yeah, because
Alright.
we haven't closed out last year, it doesn't
Okay.
roll over
Oh, yes.
doesn't bring last year's balance over until we roll over.
Okay.
Well, thank you for that information, my heart just dropped when I was with that 39.
Took me a minute, so yes, all right. But I think what Mark or Laura can do is just give us the two together and
Yes.
so you can see it, just so we can see where we're at, and then we'll,
I wanna jump in with a quick motion, just so that we are on the right page with our, so that when we get to the point in the agenda,
Okay.
we're okay. I move that we modify the agenda items 6E to read Fall Special Town Meeting Notice. Item 7 to read August 13th, 2019, for the date, review of minutes, August 13th, 2019. And I believe 8, the date should read September 17th, and future meeting dates.
And future meeting date?
Mhm.
I second that.
all in favor?
Aye,
Aye.
it's keeping us honest.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, I don't wanna get to it, then.
Yeah.
And Mark, I had one question for you. Earlier, you mentioned packaged foods. People that sell just simple packaged foods don't need a license. And the only concern I have about that is a lot of packaged foods still have expiration dates and sell-by dates. So how is that regulated?
It's regulated by the state. We can't go and change what the state required, so
Okay, but
it
they're still,
concerned me as
they're
well.
still accountable for it.
If we've got a complaint, we could go in, but the chips
We
are,
can still go and inspect those places and say that you're keeping food which is expired.
correct, if we got a
So
complaint, we could
we're
go
not
in.
violating the law by
We
inspecting.
can't charge them a permit fee, though.
Okay, okay.
You can't charge for a permit, but we can tell them
But
that
we
what
could
you're
still,
doing is wrong.
definitely, we could still go in and tell them if there's a freshness date issue. We still couldn't enforce a freshness date. They're not allowed to be enforced by
That's interesting.
everywhere. If it says expires, has to be used by dates, those are the dates we can enforce. You can't, freshness dates can go out of date. I always tell the various owners of these food establishments, you're crazy to let them go out of date.
Yeah.
Because the customer will see it and say, I'll never buy another product there.
Right.
So, but they can go out of date. Most vendors are very aware of that, and they do a good job with their freshness dates. And a lot of bigger companies will pull a month before the product. Like your larger companies for potato chips, they'll pull the month before
Yeah.
the date.
Well, yeah, because they do their own racking.
That's right.
Yeah.
I've caught a few of them asking for something in the aisles, and they say, oh,
Right.
we don't work
So
here.
those,
Yes,
yeah,
that's right.
yeah, they buy rack space and they manage it themselves.
Yeah, it's amazing.
I was just looking at these fee schedule, and it's, my thought process is I don't know that we need to increase our fees. but I think it's worth looking at them, because I
Mhm.
think there may be fees that we may wanna incorporate. For
Right.
example, building permit application review. It's, $25, you know, things like that. Maybe there's things that we have not incorporated that maybe we should,
Okay,
or vice versa. I just,
so maybe we can review them and come back. I mean, I noticed on one of them, there was a, hold on. I know that the Farmer's Raw Milk in Framingham is because of that farm. But, there was one, I think it was Natick, that had a cottage kitchen and then a incubator shared kitchen participant. So do we have any of that going, so that's like people that wanna like bake and they have to go use somebody else's kitchen
It's
cause they
like
can't do it in their
Worcester,
house
we license them as
We
caterers, right?
license them as a caterer,
as a
and
caterer.
they have to have a licensed facility to work out of, so.
Okay.
We had one request just recently and told them you would need to get an inspection of your licensed facility, so they have to come in as caterers.
Okay.
There was last year somebody who misused that without having permit.
That's correct.
So we need to make sure the owners of these kitchens know that they need to find
And the
somebody
owner of
who's
that
like-
kitchen was advised, but, you know, then they closed the whole place.
Excuse me.
But, so, you know, I'm seeing, incubator kitchen or shared kitchen and kiosk, like, I'm surprised nobody has a kiosk at the train station yet. So do we have those kinds of things in ours?
They would, it comes on the mobile unit. If
Okay.
it's a kiosk, it's a mobile unit in most cases,
And the
or
fee is,
temporary.
we charge a
So we would charge under those sections
Fee.
there.
larger than that.
But we could call it a kiosk, you know.
I'm just
something
wondering if maybe, like,
Kiosk on
if
wheels.
you're saying we charge that under, if we make it just clearer for people who might wanna do that, like a shared participant or a kiosk, you know? 'Cause you know, but if you hit the lottery tomorrow, Mark, is everybody else gonna know?
Please keep wishing that.
Huh?
Please keep wishing that.
For all of us. But,
Yeah, but I think this
but you know what I'm saying? Like, I think
Understandable.
there's new things that happen,
are.
sort of,
I also noticed in the same fee schedule, oh, I'm sorry, yeah, Natick, we were Natick, right?
yeah.
Natick, it's just, it's, ironic, but it's, drinking water well is 300 and irrigation well is 150.
Huh,
Well abandonment, so there's other fees that, well abandonment, which we know is a review and, I think it's good information to review.
where's well abandonment in ours?
We don't have a
It's
fee.
part of the well permit. When if they're drilling a new well and abandoning an old well, which is very, very, I don't
Rare.
remember one to me. I don't know of any well that's ever been abandoned in Ashland.
Yeah, you
Okay.
do.
An abandoned well?
Uh-huh.
Okay, I know of one then, but you're gonna have to remind me.
Aren't they doing water
But
testing?
maybe there's
Because it
one or
has to be
two, but
potable.
they,
Yep.
you know, it's very unusual for people to abandon wells unless they had
Yeah.
one prior to, at the time when they had water connection and they forgot to abandon the well. Septic systems, we get a
Yeah, I was
lot
gonna
of
say probably
abandonment
many
on
people don't
septic.
get rid of their private well and then move to town water.
Yeah,
right?
you know, and I know KG, we don't know of any, outside of
Okay.
maybe one or two in the years. It's very, I don't know when the water department started tying in older homes, if they required the abandonment back in those days. It had to be 30+ years ago.
Easiest way to find out is that use the list, find out whether they have water available, then go and ask them, what did you do with it?
It
You
could
can
be
send, you can send the
300
addresses to
cents.
the water department, tell them who's on the meter, who's not on the meter.
Well, there are rules and regulations with the state, as to how to abandon a well,
Yes.
the way that it's filled and the way that it's done.
Right. Well, that's what I'm saying is, I mean, I just think like things like that are, I don't know, I mean, would somebody hook into town water and abandon their well?
Well, maybe they had an old irrigation well, or, you know,
Something and they hooked in.
and.
But is that
they-
reasonable? I don't know. I mean, I don't know if that's even I mean, it's $150. I don't know if that's even a reasonable fee.
Yeah,
I don't know what we would do.
Yeah, I mean, and we.
I require the
can't-
certification from the well driller, and
Right.
they're the ones that are following state policy, they're not requirements, state procedures and policies, so.
Yeah,
but
we
they-
wanna charge
yeah,
somebody under $50 if we don't do
yeah,
anything
and
for
if
it.
they submit a form,
We have to charge what, you know,
use
for our
I
it.
think
services.
they bring it in and he needs to review it and sign it.
Right, so maybe it's not 150, maybe it's 25, you know,
Yeah.
they're just small.
While we're on that well, Mark, if we can use whatever data that we have from ours, that 80 or 90 well that you have, in the same format as the state one, and then it's easy to compare and update the list so that we know what we have, because we only have 1/3 of what the
Yeah, you're talking about the well drill forms.
total.
Yeah.
We have what the state showed about 220 wells of both drinking water
Many of
wells.
those are
using.
the monitor wells they put in for
No,
environmental sites.
they have categorized it separately, monitor
Yeah.
wells, irrigation
Yeah.
wells, and then the
Yes.
test wells and everything.
Yeah.
I have sent all
Yes,
the,
we have it.
I've sent all the 6 sheets for you from the
Okay.
state that I
Yeah.
have.
Yeah.
And I was trying to work out and find out whether there are any which the state doesn't have it, but we have it, then I'm gonna ask the state, how come you don't have it? So we need to make sure that the data is complete. So across the board, if you can keep the same format as they have it, then it'll be much easier for you to compare it
Yeah,
next
oh, we
time.
can convert to that.
Aren't we supposed to approve these yearly?
No,
No, we're not, okay.
no, but I mean, this is a lot, you know, to review
Yeah.
here, but what I was gonna say is, my thing is with the fee schedule, whether we increase the fees or not, we should round them up or
Oh,
down. Like,
okay.
some of them are,
158.
right, right,
No,
just, I mean,
For what purpose, though?
I don't know.
I think the better investment in time personally would probably be going where Judy, I think you were going there, or maybe you were, or both of you, is to maybe make a list of all the fees that everybody charges, and then look at the ones we don't have a fee for. And maybe
Yeah.
say, should we have that? Is it a probability that someone might do that? I think that's probably a better investment in time than, you know, taking a buck off or on a fee here and there.
Well, like for me, it's like animal permit's $19.
Yeah.
I mean, clearly there's more than $19 worth of work for an animal inspector to go out and do a barn inspection. I mean, it's like, something like that, I think we should look at as well, that's not covering the services they're getting.
Do you inspect the swimming pools?
Yeah, remember?
Oh,
we
yes,
had it?
we have a
We have a
swimming
fee
pool
for
fee.
it?
Yes.
Oh,
Yep,
When they first get put in, you mean, not every year?
No, only.
$285.
$285, that's routine inspections of
Hmm.
semi-public pools. We don't inspect pools in people's
Oh,
backyards.
okay.
yeah,
Oh,
The building
Those are like
inspector
a- yeah,
does, but we
community.
don't.
Oh, okay.
the community,
Like
Remember that-
Cyrus, Chestnut Apartments, those
Yeah.
pools,
lanterns, right?
the lanterns,
Yeah.
yeah.
All right, so why don't we'll put it on the agenda for the next meeting, just so everybody can review it and just digest it and,
Is that something that, I know you went through a lot of time pulling all this together. Are you familiar with all the fees? Like, would you know, looking at somebody else's, what they had and what we didn't have?
Well, Laura and I went through the
Just
fee
ours.
schedule, and we went through a few of these. She asked me some questions, and
Uh-huh.
I said, well, we don't even have regulations to enforce for that, so
okay, so.
some of these we'll have to decide if the, like bees, you know,
Oh, beekeepers, you
So,
mean, yeah.
would it be better
store
if the
chemical
two of
toilets, we talked about.
you
that.
sat down and went over it and
Yeah,
made,
we can
just,
make the list, and
and
then
then
I
maybe
can
it
say
came back
no
to us, because I think, like you
regulations.
said, if we look at, like I,
Yeah.
If we look at it, we might do things that don't, but, you know, if there's something that, well, I call that catering, well, if it's really shared kitchen, let's call it shared kitchen.
right,
That's
yeah.
fine.
Cause then
And I
somebody
look at
looking
the-
online can say, oh, that's what it's gonna cost me.
right.
The shared kitchen concept has become much more popular in the last few years.
It's so expensive.
Most of the vendors that participate at our farmers market use one in Worcester.
That's good.
Yeah, you know, I hear everybody has to go to Worcester,
Yeah.
yeah.
Laura, is this all available in PDF form?
Yeah.
If you can email it to me, that'd be good.
Is that the fee schedule?
All the fees.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you have it in the.
I already have it, they're not.
She's ahead of the game.
Yeah,
All
I
right,
was
so why don't
trying-
we do it that way as
trying
well?
to
And
see
and
if I
I,
can
but I
put
look
it
at, I look at the
Excel
fees and they're
spreadsheet
not
with-
actually
with
that, I
ease.
thought they were off like
Then you can paste all the things
more
in one
off than they
column
are
and
now, so
compare it
they're not.
easily.
That's a good idea.
I'll see. Let me tinker with my brain a little
All
bit.
right.
He's gonna KG him.
So, yeah, it's funny, I just saw on one of these funeral director.
Yeah.
So,
We only get one fee on that.
if it's $50 in Northborough, do we
We
have a
charge
fee for
them?
that?
No, we don't do inspections of funeral homes, so it's kinda hard to, you shouldn't create a fee if you don't do inspections.
Yeah, we can't charge a fee if we're not providing a service.
Right,
yeah,
right.
so- But we
Okay.
do have one funeral director here in town, that's,
Right, okay.
yeah.
Who's
So-
actually on the agenda tonight?
Oh, okay, yes, okay.
Well,
As a-
let's get to
for the
Kate.
ballot.
That's right.
Well, we're gonna go to
It's
KG
funny,
next.
yeah, all right.
Just ironic you brought that up, cause he's got a well application in here.
KG, you're up next.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I've been talking about this for the past couple of years regarding requesting the new constructions to manage their whatever ponds or whatever they create there, to make sure the water is aerated or moved, or they could probably put a fountain which is, looks good for them as well as it helps mosquitoes not breeding there. So we could try to get something working through the planning board or through the conservation to tell them. So we must probably take a stand on it, saying that we should insist on these people maintain it properly, because if they don't cut the vegetation inside,
Well, I
then it's a
talked to
problem.
Megan today from Conservation, and
Mhm.
she had said, under, I guess their rules, regulations, and guidelines, is once they sign off on it, they don't have any jurisdiction over it. So she was gonna look into seeing if they could, maybe a deed restriction or whatever the case may be, because what you were referring to, I think originally, is just having water that's not standing, whether it's a fountain or some type of circulation, so it's not a breeding ground for mosquitoes. She was gonna look into that and see if you could incorporate that into the conservation rules.
Yeah.
Oh.
Because-
good.
And she said maybe it could be a deed recording that they're required to do X, Y, and Z, or have maybe a
Plan,
a mosquito-
put in
a
there to
management
maintain
plan
it and
for it.
keep it clean all the
Right.
time.
Right.
That's, especially with this climate change, I'm sure there are going to be more mosquitoes coming.
I think it's a great idea. I think it would fall under your
I mean,
other,
these
other
lit-
hat that you wear.
These little mosquitoes have held us down for 3 weeks.
Well, it's true, they are.
They don't fly, but the emails fly
A
around.
lively afternoon session.
Well, if we're going through all this as individuals within the town to prevent mosquitoes and putting spray on, if construction's going on and making pools from their digging, it makes sense that we should have some kind of rule about that.
Well, he's I think you're talking about like if a subdivision puts in like a retention pond,
Uh-huh.
and then there's a body of water that, whether it's full or partially full or
Uh-huh.
sometimes full, to keep some type of a management plan of that.
But
Whether
the-
it's vegetation or if it's filled with water, keeping the
Or
water moving.
aerated, or, pump air into it, or.
I definitely agree with that, but I think you have a bigger problem, because there are less of those, I think, than there are possibilities for just residential water features. You know,
Ponds, I
somebody,
think.
yeah, somebody may do a landscape and have a water feature that doesn't have a pump, and it's non-circulating. I think that there's probably certainly the possibility is that there are a greater number of possibilities for it to be at the residential level than at the corporate, let's call it the corporate level,
Right.
apartments. So, it's a good idea, but I think it's a bigger thought process for everybody,
And I'm not trying to be smart, but and I don't know anybody who has one, maybe somebody
Right.
here does, but I
Yeah.
mean, do you think that with what's going on right now, somebody would know enough to do something with that?
no.
Okay, I don't know, I don't know anybody that has one.
And I
You mean
don't,
like a
and I don't
fountain
know
in the
that-
backyard?
Well, like a
Fountains.
I
I know-
don't
I
know
know
that
one person.
Koi
landscapers,
pond or
I
something
don't
they
know
want.
that landscapers, I don't know enough to know that landscapers are saying that when people are planning landscapes, doing landscape work.
I
Does the
see what you're saying.
landscaper, licensed landscaper say, well, if you wanna build a water feature, you really should have a pump in there because that will help prevent mosquitoes
Right.
from breeding?
It's better for them, because they're using the water feature there to sit down around, and then
No,
they
I
will be
am-
bitten by the
No, yeah.
mosquito, not me.
I support it. I'm just saying,
So-
if we're gonna think about it
Right.
on any scale, it should
Sure.
be on the full scale, not just the minor
Sure,
scale.
sure,
No,
definitely.
but even with that right now, I mean, maybe that's, food for thought for maybe Mark for, he's doing a weekly update, maybe that's something he should add in it,
Mhm,
is, because I never thought about it, because like I said, I don't know anybody that has one, but it's a good point.
mhm,
And maybe even the people, hopefully somebody's watching our meeting,
yeah.
but I mean,
They'll know
I
to
mean, I
aerate
guess it
it,
would be
yeah.
an aeration versus a treatment, right, Mark? That would be, is there what, do we
The
have a
whole idea is to move the water so it doesn't become stagnant.
Yeah, it could be done
related to
inexpensively.
So
mosquitoes.
these retention ponds are meant to fill up and then flow out into the environment. I have one behind my house. It fills up on a really heavy rain, but it goes right out.
Right, so it's collecting
Into the
stormwater
So,
in
woodland,
that
yeah,
area.
detention pond, that's the function of a detention pond.
Detention, so,
Retention is it holds it in place and
Oh.
evaporates,
so I have an in and an out, I'm a,
so the
Yeah,
detention.
even in both cases, if they don't maintain it properly, like, vegetation grows underneath,
Yeah.
that becomes a dam. Then you have a stagnant water.
But I know it's probably putting you on the spot, but the same thing, if somebody's watching, it's the same thing with people who have, like, cover on a pool, a pool,
yeah,
or a covering on a pool to
Sure.
keep that water off, so you're not
Keep
having
it-
standing
yeah.
water, right?
Or treated.
Mhm.
We have someone that wanted a frog pond about 5 years ago, and she's been required to treat.
Okay.
They can put larvicide
Okay.
within a frog pond if that's what they
Yeah, I
wish
mean,
to
if-
have.
I mean, it might be worth it to maybe put it in your next newsletter in case anybody has one,
Mhm.
that,
koi pond or something like that.
yeah. Alright, well, I guess you can keep us up to date and see what's
That's
going
for
on.
tires,
Probably should.
Yeah,
they
Yeah.
take a lot of water there
Right.
inside,
right,
all of these things. there.
right, all of those things help,
I'm guessing.
right.
So we may need to put some don't do's and do's in the web somewhere, all of these things.
We
that-
Yeah, well, Mark,
Yeah.
yeah, I was gonna say, I know you did an update today, cause I saw it, but I didn't read it, but I mean, even like, maybe changing it up a little, maybe do's and don'ts or something.
Sure.
And I received today the situational awareness report from the state, it's later this after, so I'll be updating our situational awareness with that data. The risk levels haven't changed, but, other data such as stagnant water can be added.
Yeah, it's,
I thought you were gonna talk about the dust.
alright, you all set with that, KJ?
I'm all set.
Okay, alright, Mark, your report. 6A.
We have done, well, we looked at it, but, well, I know you looked at it, the budget for FY '20 is, the munis report that you have, and it's limited to the last 2 months, but we're in very good shape as it relates to the process that of the funding at this present time. And again, you always wanna look at the, permanent positions at 13.2, and we're at 11.2, but some of these items are large spending items such as contracted services, when they test the landfill, both for the monitor pipes, both for gas and groundwater, the monitor pipes for water table in respect to water testing, we'll get a bigger bill for that, an invoice, so these will fluctuate through the year.
If I can make a small,
Yeah.
I'm thinking that something's going on with this report, because I'm sure we paid Laura more than $95.
It could be overtime only, but
Well,
it
that's her
could,
regular clerical line
yeah,
item.
I hope
So
we
I'm
paid
just-
you more than 95. Yeah,
So I just,
yeah.
you
I
worth more than $95
If
for
we
her.
paid Laura
I-
95, we're all taking her out to eat tonight.
Yeah,
I know,
yeah.
so-
Poor
but I'm just saying, just-
Laura's built into, the
And buying her.
Is she the permanent
These
position?
are permanent
Oh, okay.
positions, but interesting,
Oh, I'm
they,
glad
so
you
they,
said that, Mark.
so they did something here with the overtime, and I think they have 2 lines for overtime.
Okay, I'm sorry, so I didn't
20 and
realize that you were
21.
both included in the permanent
Yeah.
position, okay.
Yeah.
Alright, so that explains
But
that, so that's,
that's interesting how they broke those 2 up. So that, we're both combined in permanent positions.
so, so we're just thinking about when we were talking to the city of Framingham, so we actually have,
8616.
Yeah, what is that, $95 or,
That was for clerical overtime, I believe. Is that a yes? Okay, thank you, Laura.
that's,
You're worth more than that.
you deserve it, but why do they have to separate it out?
It's a good question. It really should be in the second line
It
item.
was just probably keyed in wrong.
Mm.
I think they just wanted to make KG ask.
But in general, Mark, so the contracted services is the
They know how to read my
landfill
mind ahead of
production
time.
services is, it's like, for the discussion with
Yeah.
Framingham, it's 10. 10 is our number.
10,000
Okay,
is what we
okay.
received this year. Correct.
all right.
You're not
All
in
right.
there. Did you go there?
All right, and then we have,
See, and, this was, that was from, that's from my brother, a friend of my father-owes.
all right, Mark, the next one is,
Was put on
Go to
the
hospital, put all
line
these tapes.
item
Yeah.
6B, which we had an emergency meeting last week, as everyone knows. and the aerial spraying has been completed as was updated. Will they do another aerial spraying? That's the question that is a waiting question. We have to wait to see what the state decides. State Department of Agricultural Resources will make that determination. There may be a possibility to spray in 2 weeks from the first spraying, that would be next week. There may not. So right now, it's just, we have to wait for their review. They're reviewing the mosquito population. Was it reduced? Was it reduced to the satisfaction of the state? And if it was, they may not come out and do a second spraying. If they feel it wasn't reduced, or if they find continuous mosquito pools that have triple E, they may decide to come out. So it's unfortunately, there's no direct answer to it until almost the time that they make their decision, which could be at the end of this week. So we have to wait and see. And the risk of the triple E risk categories from last week, August 29th, till this week, I just got this afternoon, have not changed. Everyone's in the same risk categories. We're in high risk, and we have surrounding towns near us that are critical risk.
On just about every border, huh?
Yeah.
Sad.
When we met at the emergency meeting last week, we agreed that when we left that meeting, a group of people were supposed to be contacted. Has everyone on that list been contacted? There were a number of people that had to be contacted, whether it be people that rent out fields or.
Oh, yeah,
all
I'm
that
sorry,
other
yeah,
stuff.
so that, well, that, yes.
All that
was-
communication's
yeah.
been, okay, I wanna make sure, I want that to be on the record.
Yeah.
So we
Yeah,
have,
Yes,
we-
thank you for asking,
Yeah.
because that was done, and
Yeah.
so we have
Indeed.
separate
Thank you.
lists already made up, so next time if such an event happens, we can hit the list.
yeah, Laura's gonna hit the
Correct.
button.
That's it, that saves time and makes it faster
Yeah,
for
yes.
response next time.
Yeah.
Mark, question, when they give you the data for this, I didn't see it in there, but do they give you data regarding the percentages of mosquitoes that they test versus the percentage that are positive? You know, is it 20%, is it 30%, is it 50%?
They don't,
They don't do that.
they don't do
It's a
that.
good
They-
question, though.
yeah.
I just didn't know if there was a measure, you know, like if you get stung by a mosquito, you're gonna have it for sure,
Yeah,
or
no.
there's a 20% chance, or,
In fact, that question is another question that keeps coming up, and according to Ron O'Connor, our liaison to DPH, there's nothing you can do if you've been bit by a mosquito that has
Right.
triple E. There's no vaccinations, there's no cure, and unfortunately, you don't know. That's why caution, caution, caution. It's remote,
yeah.
but it's still there, and that's why I know it was a hard process to get everyone on board, but I think as other towns started getting on board, and we got on board with the school superintendent, the understanding was there, avoid any activities from dusk till dawn, wear mosquito spray. In other areas is to remove all stagnant water, long sleeves, short sleeves, but try to stay out of the darkness, you know, from dusk to dawn, when mosquitoes are most active, but it's unfortunate.
Yeah.
They have no test to determine if you have triple E.
Yeah.
And do we, with the same kind of stem off of that, like, so will they test hypothetically today and we'll know by Thursday? Like, when do they test mosquitoes every day in each community?
Once a week, and so
is it in
we
the-
get a summary in the report. This is the most recent one, but we get a summary in Central Mass. I don't think you have this page.
Oh,
but
okay.
It's you'll see it though.
Oh,
I'll
yeah,
send it
we-
out to you.
yeah.
I came in this afternoon. This is the most recent report, but they give summaries in the chart here of the samples tested, basically, and that's how they show what's been tested and how many per week, and specimens tested. But again, it's just, it doesn't really say the percentage that I think maybe Ron was asking. So it just shows the specimens tested and the dates. In Central Mass, been around 203 to 243 specimens.
Would we
in
be
the-
considered,
in
is
that
this,
time
would this
period.
be considered us?
No, we're Central Mass.
Oh, there we are, okay,
Yeah.
sorry. So they've
And,
tested the most
yeah,
in
if you
our
look
area,
out in-
1691.
If you look out in this area, the county is out in the western part of Massachusetts, they don't do as much testing. But now that they had, unfortunately, risk levels change and the human case, I believe it was human, up in the northern section of the state there.
Did you have that sheet in this packet?
No, this is, I just grabbed this off the computer tonight.
Oh, okay.
This we just got, but I'll send you it. I'll
Okay.
send you it, that's not a problem. It's in our
To be included in the
Board of Health
minutes.
drive. Yeah, we can include it in the
Oh, yeah,
minutes.
it
That's-
has to be, because you already did it.
Yep, yeah, I referenced the September, whatever Diane has on the back of that, no, September 3rd report.
Thank you.
Came in this afternoon late, so it's, will get sent to you.
Excuse me. All right. You all set with that, Mark? Anybody have any
Yes.
questions or anything for Mark? All right. Site walk?
Yeah, I took a site walk with many people, including our planning agents, including our conservation agent, representatives from the Mass Department of Environmental Protection, as well as representative from the EPA. And the other members there that were giving us the tour were the Citizens Energy engineers and group personnel involved with the project. We more or less viewed the area where they will be putting the panels. We didn't walk up on the cap, but they explained how they were doing it. We met at the top of where the gate is, from Magunko Road. We walked down to where the utility poles are being put to carry the power back down towards the old building, which was, the original Nyanza building. Now it's Nyacol's Labs. And the power will go down that way with the grid. Cause that was our problem with the landfill, how you getting that electricity from the solar panels to the grid, and they showed us how. So they will not be putting any utility poles into the cap, they can't. So, and if they had to, they'll follow the same format they did at the landfill, and that is they put it on the ground so they wouldn't disturb our cap. So a lot of what happened at our landfill kind of was discussed. I brought up questions of that nature at this landfill, which is a Superfund cap. They're expecting to start soon. I would say you might see work in the next week or two, depending on conservation. You have to get the wetlands resolved and flagged and all that, so. And then they have two areas, it's just not this area, but if you look across from where they set a parking lot up behind the baseball field of the middle school, they're doing an area across the street there too, so you'll see some of those trees coming down. And they're trying to be cautious to leave as many trees as they can as a buffer on the RTD road, so. You probably, and I did ask if they would have tours as the work is in progress for board members, cause I said that happened years ago when they worked on Nyanza to do various projects, and they said they would. And our representative from DEP thought that was a good idea, so I said it's nice to keep everyone in the loop, let them see the progress and so forth. So when it's safe, they will set up tours according to what they promised us.
I'm wondering how safe are solar panels on a Superfund site, but I'm sure somebody smarter than me has researched that in the DEP and
Well,
said that there's
theoretically,
now-
it's
That's correct.
on the side of the cap, it's on the side, it's
It'll
on
be
the same
on
property
over-
with,
Yeah, it'll be on the cap. The panels will be on the cap. They're gonna be on ballast. They're cement blocks, and
So
to
above
answer your
it.
question, it's been reviewed by EPA. All the plans have gone through EPA and the DEP and their engineers and legal departments. Yeah, I believe it's been done on several of them now, cause it's a great place to get some use out of a site that you wouldn't get other types of use out of. So, it's more or less promoted for these type of sites.
So
And is the town benefiting from this?
No, I
Citizens
think
Energy?
what they give it is for the low-income family, the power is given. I think they may allow us to distribute it to any of the low incomes that they wanted here. That's what I thought last time when they presented
I
the
would think
Nyanza
yeah.
committee, that's when I heard it, so I don't know.
probably
I don't
because
know
it's
that
not owned by the
information.
town. This is property owned by a private entity, so.
yeah. We, the town, receive benefits from the solar panels that are on our landfill.
Okay.
No, that's, the one that's going on the Nyanza is Kennedy's.
Yes, Citizens Energy.
That's the one
Correct,
that
but
is
that's what I'm saying
doing
is
that. They might benefit the citizens at low
Yeah,
income.
yeah, they have, I think, they're
Yeah.
like I agree.
So that's
what I've heard.
independent of where they are.
I did hear that as well. I didn't know if that was like official, but yes, somebody could apply through Citizens Energy
I think so.
to receive the benefit.
The one on the municipal cap there, that, I think we have benefits certain amount, $20,000 or something in a year, so.
I don't know the total amount of the credits, but we do receive credits on our utility bills
Not the
for
Board
the
of
House
Health,
Street
the town
landfill
gets it.
on the town's
I
utility.
thought we were getting it, KG.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it
It's on
offsets
this.
our bills, usually it's at a 10% reduction, I don't know what that one is, but, and even Mike Kane's property on 126, the town receives, a reduced rate of the power that he generates there for our water treatment facility. So we have agreements with both of them for the town property. All right, let's see. All right, so this is for the irrigation well, and I know Mark is
Yeah.
gonna do a presentation. I wanna clarify for I was not on the board for this before, but I talked to Mark today about this, that the board previous, just, I think all of us, took a vote to authorize Mark to issue, permits, I guess of the food permits and, septic permits and things. And made a copy of it because I was surprised that we had to approve a well,
Yes.
but Mark approves everything else. So I'm gonna I made
Sure.
copies of it because I just wanna make I think it's clear, and I mean, it would be much easier for Mark, but I wanna make sure that, and Laura, I'll have Mark, I know you saw this today, but, so what do you have in front of you is, the first one is the well regulations that Mark and I went over today. This is the part of it that requires a review.
Okay.
Those are regulations from 2010. And then on the second page is the vote that the previous board took.
What's the date on this?
I think it was
Sorry, I was gonna say I did-
2016.
2016, I have the actual whole set of minutes, but,
What's nice is they approved the minutes right up here, 2016.
There you go, yeah.
Before me, I was not there.
well, and none of us were here, but I read it, and I think it's pretty clear. And if that's the case, we'll move past the next subject.
So, I don't understand. So, first of all, I need to disclose that I am an abutter, I believe, of this property.
Oh, okay.
Do I need to disclose that?
You need to disclose.
Yes, you need to,
even-
and abstain from discussion on the, yes.
Okay. I
and-
believe this could be me.
Okay.
I'm not sure,
Okay.
because that was the past owner of my property.
Okay. Well, just for,
So I can discuss this,
Judy, I don't think you are.
I can get the assessors map if
This
not.
is,
right here.
That's you?
Well, I bought my land from him.
Oh, okay, so that's, okay, I'm thinking,
You got it.
No,
I'm thinking,
we're-
right, I'm sorry,
So,
thank you for clarifying that.
so I can discuss this.
Yeah, you can.
Correct, you can discuss, it, yes.
So, this applicant came in for this, it looks like it's dated 2018.
Oh, this is probably an old plan, right?
Oh, I can't talk about that, all right.
Well, that's
But-
okay, no, that's, I mean,
Okay, so wells are clearly in the purview of the Board of Health, and then the Board of Health, in 2016, three years ago, gave permission to Mark to issue any and all permits under the purview of the Board of Health and to sign them as necessary.
right, so therefore, we wouldn't need to I look at it as we wouldn't need to review this application.
So I guess my question is, how long has this poor resident been waiting for this to get approved?
Well, they just dated this from September 3rd.
Today,
All right. So,
they submitted the the revised plan today.
September 3rd.
Yeah, that's when the other plan, I think it's just a plan that they're using dated a different year. But,
Yeah,
I mean,
that's
what I
exactly-
didn't wanna do is because, you know.
So
and-
Mark,
and-
why didn't you feel like you could approve it, I guess?
What happened, if I may, through the history of that vote, the approval of domestic wells was separate, in my view, from irrigation wells, because the board was reviewing wells for other purposes. The one purpose, the main purpose, irrigation. Cyrus Apartments comes to mind, and they actually set limits on testing those wells, pre and post use of those wells. They also reviewed and approved the Lanterns irrigation wells, and the reason for it is
You're talking
That was-
about the Board of Health did that?
the Board of Health,
Uh-huh.
this group, the 5-member board. And the reasons were brought to the board that, from a group that feels we shouldn't even be allowing irrigation wells, because in the times of drought, there's a chance that, other wells will be drawing from our water source and could be affecting public water or other people's wells. So if it's to keep a lawn green, their feeling was, this group, that we shouldn't allow them to be used during droughts, so.
This group meaning Board of Health?
No, it was a
Oh.
different group
Outside
that
group.
came to the meeting. There were a
Okay.
few people very concerned
Okay,
about us approving irrigation wells. So that's why they've always been brought to the board, so that it gives the general public an opportunity, if they're not here tonight, but if they so wish, they could
Now, would you
entertain.
would feel, I mean, I know with them, when I directly worked for you, I mean, I know you used, would you feel comfortable doing this? I mean,
No, I wouldn't, not for irrigation wells, because of that purpose. I would have no problem for domestic water wells, but for irrigation wells, I think, you're gonna have, in other states in this country, you have water rights and water concerns, and we're very water-rich at this time. But especially after experiencing that summer where our reservoir went down to almost a puddle, and we started needing emergency water, it makes me very uncomfortable. I was telling Diane that even the state's starting to feel uncomfortable about irrigation well use during droughts, and that even if we approve this, we should advise the applicant that the chances are possible, there's a possible chance rather, that during a drought, the state may declare no use of irrigation wells out for lawns. So we do have a few out there, but that's why
I
I'm
think we should
uncomfortable.
update our regs.
It spells it out, I think it says Ashland Board of Health. I think when the Board of Health allowed me to approve wells, I was approving domestic water wells through the process. Those I don't wanna see, tied up, because people need that to drink the water that they need for their homes, their livelihood. That's different from someone wanting a green lawn.
So the law, like, when you see the sign that says lawn law is in effect, odd and even, all that kind of stuff, that doesn't apply to irrigation wells?
No.
Only to hoses?
Right.
At this
Yeah, only
point,
this
public
was
water
going.
supply that applies to.
I gotcha.
Yeah, not irrigation wells,
So irrigation wells are private, okay,
Right,
I see what you
right.
mean.
but the group that came said, well, they're all got straws in the same aquifer.
Yeah.
Well, to some degree, they're correct.
Right. And I remembered this vote, that's why I said something to Laura and Mark, I said, gee, I remember the board giving Mark authority to do things, and I was very, very surprised, and it's for discussion, that I was just surprised that
I think it allows an open session. If you see more and more irrigation wells, you may see other groups coming in concerned about water rights.
because they put, the vote here, it says, it says Mark clarified that he currently issues septic and well permits.
Yeah, those were the domestic wells.
so we're talking about it
It
tonight.
should have been clarified better, I agree,
Right,
Diane.
yeah.
It's very misleading.
I
So,
think-
go
I think
ahead.
on book, we need to modify it and clarify it next time, just to
So
bring back
the
and
board
so,
wants to review
we-
irrigation wells, but we'll let Mark
Yeah.
review domestic wells?
correct. If that's the case, that's what he wants, so he needs to be,
I think it opens it to the general public at
keep his
least.
uncomfortables to minimum.
So can I ask a technical question, cause I'm not asking anything about this one in
Yeah.
particular? So if it's that, so do we have to notify abutters and have a hearing on it if the board's gonna vote on it?
We don't have the requirement to it, but that's what, like, I'm not, yeah.
I don't know if you want to, but you could,
I think
and
my where I'm uncomfortable is that we really don't have parameters that we're giving, we have rules and regulations on irrigations, but we don't have guidelines that we're going by specifically, right, for
It's true.
irrigation.
it's just, say if someone had, say these 2 irrigation wells are going in and this whole neighborhood had domestic wells
Mhm.
included, and they had a domestic well and an irrigation well, I think the board could then say, well, you already have a domestic well, overuse of that well could affect your neighbor's wells, so that day may come. Like I said, we're so water rich right now, and this year, we've definitely been water rich, in New England, but there are summers where it's getting very painful to see our water levels go down in the Hopkinton Reservoir, which is directly related to our wells, so.
And not specific to this well, but
Let's-
could we, you know, as a board, could we not allow irrigation wells, period?
That group wanted that,
No,
actually.
but could we, so,
You could,
okay, we could change our
But I
regulations
would
if we chose
suggest
to.
go through legal counsel,
Yeah.
because everyone, it's, water rights have been fought throughout the country, especially by, and legal counsel should review that stopgate, because I would suggest not doing complete ban, but saying, have, as you said, have different requirements. If you have an irrigation well, you realize in a drought, you can't use it for watering your
And I
lawns.
respect your comfort zone, but I think I have the same comfort zone here, because we would be looking for your recommendation for a
Yeah.
property.
To
And
be-
if we don't have any guidelines to go, if you're uncomfortable, because I'm throwing out a hypothetical, you don't have the guidelines to go through, and you want us to review it, we don't have the same guidelines. Like, I don't know what we,
And
We
one of the
have-
things, you know, as just a homeowner.
Is this the first one in like, since 2016 that's come before?
We had
My
Cyrus.
association has one, another disclosure.
Yeah.
Um,
Yes, they do.
So,
That was a long time ago.
yeah, it was put in a long time ago, but I would hope that my board at where I live would say, you know, if it was this kind of drought, that, yeah, you shut it off. I mean,
I'm curious, like as a homeowner, if I were looking to put in an irrigation well and I were denied, and I'm like, well, my neighbor has one. You know, how many people have them? How many are out there? And,
It's,
we have to have
What
more of a
kind
guidance to go.
yeah, so,
Yeah.
it's kind of, there's a lot of gray areas in just saying, okay, well, I mean, maybe we do have the authority to say you can't have any more, or as of this date, we won't be approving any more. But I think we have to address that, because that's gonna be, and I'm thinking we have a public
Like-
forum to discuss this.
Like the limited tobacco permits.
Well,
so
all
we
my
limit it.
neighbors have,
Well,
Limit the number of wells.
you know,
And my thing is to, I mean, our septic regulations are very specific, you
Mhm.
know, I mean, Mark reviews this large plan, has all these things to review, all this stuff to review, so a well is, I would think, a little bit less complex with reviewing a well distances and things like that, and I don't know, for me, I just think he has a lot more experience on looking at a plan
Yeah,
and
no,
making a
for
judgment
sure.
than if we don't have if we don't have,
you know, I'd
if
be
we don't have
more,
I
very
mean, he
strict
would have to
rules.
give guidance as to, it looks like, I don't wanna refer to that plan, but it looks like somebody stamped that it's not near the septic, not within so many
Right,
feet
yeah.
of septic, like, are those state rules, that kind of thing, Mark? Is that a state
and-
rule?
State
Yeah,
and
state.
local.
State and local.
right.
So it sounds like they have to come in with some kind of engineering stamp on it that says that, you know,
Right.
we are assuring you that it falls within your guidelines.
And I
And-
mean, I brought this to the board's attention too, because I know we're trying to simplify things for Mark, make it easier for the resident. So I was very surprised, I mean, we talked about it and agreed to disagree. I said, well, this covers, you should be able to just approve this well, not bring, I didn't know if they were coming tonight, but not have to take up the time, like you were saying, take up the time. I mean,
Right.
if he's approving septic and food establishments, and there's a lot of technical stuff that he
Right.
approves without bringing it to us, I would think we would rely on him
Right.
to.
But
Yeah,
he's
and I
not,
would-
he's saying he
yeah.
doesn't wanna do it, he's
Right.
not
No,
comfortable.
no, I didn't say that.
Oh,
I said I would bring it to the board, and I will give you my professional opinion, which I already will do tonight on these plans. I'm just saying that it needs public discussion in my view, because a butter may know about, see it on our agenda, or we notify abutters, and say, well, that's gonna affect my domestic well. I may run out of water for that person to have a green lawn. That's where I would advise you. I don't wanna talk about these plans right
Right.
yet, because I don't wanna get you in
no,
trouble.
And I
I'm
respect
not
that.
talking about those
You'll
plans,
hear
I just
when
wanna
you-
talk about your
Yeah, when you hear me
comfort.
discuss these, I'm gonna explain distances to other wells.
Okay,
I'm gonna explain the fact that there are no wells in this area,
And
and we'll go from there.
And I'm gonna take,
I don't want.
I'm gonna take the words from my mouth, but I said I'm uncomfortable with it, and I believe you concurred with it. I think we're both, that's why you and I have agreed to disagree, because we're both in the same position. That's why I brought it to the board, because Mark has a lot more knowledge than I do, and I know this, again, I'll call it a comfort zone. And I think we need to find a happy medium, because I
so.
don't know, I don't know what to do with
What
it.
it sounds to me, I get your point, and I agree with it, but I also understand where Mark is coming from, because I think that if Mark is empowered, say, let's call it property X, to say if a property X owner wants to put a well, and Mark's reviewed it and said, and looks at it and says, you know, there's a couple of wells at the neighbors, and this would greatly impact the neighbors. So Mark has to make a decision. Does he just say no because of that? Or Mark, is your concern that before you say no because of that those neighbors should be here, and you should say, this would be the impact to you, are you okay with it? And if they're okay with it, you might consider.
Yeah.
that
But we
type of
don't
thing.
notify them.
Mhm.
We're not, if you put in a well and you live next to me, whether you will, okay, play the situation. If somebody's putting in a well and it's gonna, you know, Mark or the board feels that it's gonna affect the neighbor, we don't call them and tell them, hey, we're having a meeting, we want your concerns, or if you have any concerns, whether Mark does it or us, it's the same procedure.
Right.
My thing is we give Mark permission to do basically everything except for if there's a conflict with a board member.
The best thing is to require the future applicants to notify the abutters within certain.
And KG, that's a good
That's-
point, if we change our regulations and do that, and it's food,
That would
it's
keep
food for
the
thought.
neighbor
Maybe
aware of
we,
it. If there
maybe
is
we
an issue, they
establish
would come
different
to the board.
procedures, right, right.
If I can too, it says quality and quantity. We've talked about quantity, about affecting other wells, but quality came up with Cyrus Apartments. Major concern, there was a group for the Nyanza,
Manganese, yeah.
there was a group, not Nyanza Advisory, but there was another group that was very concerned that Cyrus, you were here, was going to drill a well or two, they have two up there, and how would it affect Nyanza and the Plume? So, I think you were here too,
Yeah.
Ron. The board decided on quality, that they will pre and post test those irrigation wells each season. Another area in town is the landfill area. There's some homes
Can I just
across.
stop you right there?
Oh, sorry,
So if they provide that to you every
Yes.
year?
yes.
No, when it's put in, not every year.
Yeah, every
said
year.
No,
every
but
year.
I think Cirrus did say
Cyrus
that they
said,
would,
yeah.
that was part of their
Have you
agreement.
received it?
Yes.
So you
They're,
review
they're
it?
late though, they're always late.
But that's,
it seems
go
like.
ahead.
Alright, well, I'm just, so I wonder what mechanism we have in place, so, you know, they say, yeah, we'll do it, so is there some kind of tickler a year out
Yeah.
that says, you know,
We're the tickler, I guess.
Yeah,
no,
right.
but
Yeah. But it's in their deed.
where does this
It's-
information lie?
in their
that-
deed,
In the deed,
Do they have a
but-
deed restriction?
Okay,
it's in the deed. The board made it tight. The
And-
other one, if I can, the other one was just the landfill.
okay,
Our own town landfill is capped, and
Right.
there's wells across from it. There's a stream, and there's wells across. There's no evidence per se that we're connected to it with wells across the way, but there's a neighborhood that the state would require, if someone puts a well in, they
Like
may
up off of,
fall off of
How?
Sandstone,
Okay.
Dale, all those up there. They would need to go through the state, and the state DEP has not allowed it to happen at this point, because they already have two up there that are under the review of the DEP whenever they so wish. Another area that came up, someone on Pleasant Street wanted to drill a well for irrigation purposes again. And they were advised that EPA, if they hit any volatiles, organic chemicals, compounds, they would be a 21E site, so they shied away. So I just wanna say quality does get involved with irrigation wells and other agencies such as DEP and EPA. So the irrigation wells are so different from your domestic water wells where there's no town water.
And I think with that said, because I looked at this and I think we have work to do on this for irrigation. If we have these concerns, because everything he's talking about is around a hazardous waste site. Clearly, the DEP is gonna be involved.
For quantity,
So-
for quality, yes.
Yeah, I mean, quantity, if you don't get enough quantity, you're not gonna probably hook it up to whatever you're gonna do, but.
Oh, quality was more the abutters, taken from.
No, right, and the only reason those abutters knew is because they were next to a hazardous waste site. We didn't notify them.
Yeah, no, I meant quality and quantity in neighborhoods that have domestic wells. And if someone decides to go with a secondary well for irrigation, we haven't had that yet, but it could affect them.
You know, Diane's right. Mark, I think this may, let me just read this out loud and maybe, well, I'm gonna read the whole thing out loud, just to kind of think out loud for all of us.
Yep.
Wells used for drinking water and domestic water supply shall not be used to provide water for groundwater heat pump systems, for water cooling or air conditioning systems or irrigation. Any well used for such systems shall be approved by the Ashland Board of Health. So this is this is referring to irrigation systems.
Yeah.
Only after the applicant has submitted with sufficient evidence to the satisfaction of the board that such use will not disrupt any quantity of water, that was one of your concerns, why you don't wanna, approve it yourself, from any nearby well that the well will satisfy. So, if we empower you to say, this will impact the quantity of water from the well, and you
I
you
wouldn't
have
be
it.
that person.
Huh?
That's not me, that's a hydrogeologist.
No, but he's saying,
Okay.
right, but
Yeah,
they need
that's
to
not
If you
provide,
have it, right, so
The
if you have.
hydrogeologist would
so-
submit a
So,
report.
somebody comes to the board and submits an application for an irrigation well, and you have the information that it's going to impact the quantity,
Yeah.
you just say no.
and
Well,
but,
this is, if I can, though, and a hydrogeologist, unless you have distances of more than usually 200 feet, that there's no wells. In
Well,
this-
whatever the data is,
Yeah.
I mean, that,
In this
it's almost
case,
irrelevant.
Right.
there's
Yeah.
no,
right,
there's no wells presently within a long distance,
Right.
probably
Yeah.
5,000 feet.
Can I,
So these are remote, these are in the middle of nowhere, outside of the association.
so, while you were reading this, it made me think of another question.
Okay.
I love all these things that goes in my head. I'm sure you do too.
it's healthy discussion.
Yeah, so I'm reading this that, any well shall be approved only after sufficient evidence to the satisfaction of the board that they will not disrupt any quantity of water from a nearby well. So what do you do if somebody has an approved, irrigation well, and then the neighbor has to go to drinking well because there's no, water currently there?
If they chose to go to a drink for.
Well,
for-
maybe they choose, let's say they choose to go to a drinking well because they didn't like our water, okay? So, the fact that that might affect his irrigation wouldn't matter, but because there's already a well there that superseded them, correct?
Well.
You-
b-
are
b-
you-
b-
are you
I'm-
picking up what I'm throwing
Yes, I
down?
am, but hold on to your thoughts, let me ask
Okay.
you a question before that. What is the difference between an irrigation well and a well that's pumping water to your house to drinking? Or that you clean the water and take it, it doesn't matter what well it's coming out of, right?
You don't
Correct, a
clean
well
it,
is a
yeah.
well is a well, we require the same,
Yeah,
One you
Testing.
can just hose it to the garden, the other one you have to clean it and drink it.
you don't
Yeah.
clean it.
the only
They process
difference,
it.
the only difference is the irrigation well it has to have, if it's near a nearby well, if it's at a nearby well, then you have to make sure there's evidence it won't affect a nearby well. A domestic well does not require that. A domestic well can be drilled because the purpose of it exceeds the purpose of irrigation for lawns and so forth. Now, if you're building a farm, that could be different, and that's where you'd have that interchange and discussion. Probably the person would have to hire a hydrogeologist to come to our meeting. It would be an interchange of suggestions, ideas, and facts.
Somebody has a domestic well
Yes,
that's piped to his house
yes.
and uses it for a lawn. Forbidden?
Not forbidden,
Okay.
but could
So
be,
you
follows
could
the
build
same
a.
standards.
Huh?
It follows the same drinking water standards.
except they're testing inside at the tap as
Right.
well.
Right, that's fine.
Yeah.
But he can put a clean water to the garden also, it doesn't affect him.
And that's
So they
where
could still call it a drinking
Sure.
well and then use it for irrigation purposes.
that could
Correct.
happen.
I think
So the
they would-
quantity of water that they draw will be
Yeah.
more, not only for their drinking purposes, for
Right, they're
other
gonna- they're gonna-
use.
Yeah.
And they will be spending extra money to clean that water which goes out too. That's
What were
all.
you gonna say, Chris?
But they're not affected from using that well. They're not forbidden from using that particular well.
The more I listen, the more I see Diane's point. I think that, okay, so party X comes in to the Board of Health and says, we wanna build a well, we'd like your approval. So let's just assume that we bring it to the Board of Health. We come to the meeting, it comes on the agenda, we discuss it, we all look at Mark, what do you think? And whatever Mark says, we're gonna approve or not approve based on what Mark thinks. So cause we're not experts on this, and Mark has the data and the expertise. So instead of taking the step letting us all just listen and say, yes, Mark, whatever you say,
Right.
just do it.
I
And
just,
that just saves the
and I think
time.
Mark's covered under this vote,
Right.
but I think if there's a
Now-
clarification.
Now, the only thing, and I bring it up only because I brought it up last time too, and only because we all have to keep each other in check. It does, by bringing it to the board, it does give it somewhat of a system of checks and balances. We hold Mark accountable for his expertise by taking the vote. So at least when it comes to a meeting, we're listening to him, and in a public forum, we're all saying, yes, we agree, go with that. So now, that doesn't mean we have to do it that way, but that's the difference. It's we either say, let's just give Mark the authority to vote on it, and we take his word for it, that he's gonna be honest and do the right thing, or this is something that's a very serious thing, and we should probably have a system of checks and balances, just so we kind of run it by, and we listen to Mark's expertise, we raise questions as citizens, and get those answered, and then say, okay, that makes sense to me. So that's really, I think, what it really boils down to.
Yeah. I think also I think with this is, my suggestion would be is we reaffirm this vote that was previously taken, and I can work with Mark unless somebody else wants to do it, and I think we should really consider putting actual, I don't know if you call them rules, actual guidelines to go by. And at that time, if the board feels that irrigation should be reviewed by the board, cause we want X, Y, and Z presented, and we wanna review it a little bit more, maybe that's it, but I think we need to do more with our well regulations for irrigations. And maybe, again, I'm not sure the laws behind, but maybe we require people to follow the water ban, things like that. So I think that when we have more solid, grounds, and maybe, because then at least if somebody needed a variance, or maybe we require abutters to be notified, maybe we take.
Requiring the abutters to notify should probably be promulgated soon. That way neighbors are aware of it, what's going on, rather than just getting caught. saying,
Specifically for
"Oh,
irrigation.
my well is drying down, what happened?"
Right, and let's face
I
it,
don't think there's any way to, I don't think is it a geo, so in my previous house, we had a well in Ashland, cause there was no water on the street, and, I know that we had plenty of quantity, but other people on the street had issues, with quantity, not quality. So I don't know if it was 'cause everybody had a well, or if, I don't know if anybody can really say that. They drill down and they try to find water, and if they don't, they drill somewhere else and try to find water. It's not like a science that they absolutely know where there's a vein of water. I don't believe, unless they've changed.
At the end of the day, it's all good information, but, we decided a couple of weeks back to empower Mark on a certain thing, and Mark said if he ever had any question on it, he would come to the board.
right,
I assume he would do the same in this case too. So,
I agree, and I think that if we have thoughts
Right,
on
but-
things that we might wanna implement in the future
Only thing
well
is
regulations, it's a healthy discussion.
Maybe he keeps the board aware of it, which permits have been given or not, like this irrigation valve, which
Yeah, and I'm sure you,
documents
I'm
every
assuming you
meeting and
probably
say,
keep
okay,
it, he probably has a
how many-
database of how many.
he
people
has it,
keep-
but if it
yeah.
just adds it to the information that he provides, like
Right.
this many permits were approved in the
Right.
between last two meetings or something, whatever.
Okay,
So that way we have a tabulation, and they will have a record of looking at it, how many they did it in a year.
right,
So that's part of his
yeah,
workload, that gives you information too.
right,
I think that this, reading chapter 312 and then reading the meeting minutes clearly gives him the authority. I just need to clarify, Mark, are you comfortable doing this?
With what was just said, I think there will be times when you, especially if I refuse to approve one based on DEP recommendations near our landfill, you will need to see some of the applicants that get refused, or if it's affecting a large community and it's a large well, such as we had at Cyrus and the Lanterns.
Okay.
I'd probably bring those to the board.
And,
Okay.
it could, just for clarification, and just, again, for mine is, and because, like, the lanterns and things like that, they needed extra review by the board so we could set parameters. Is that what happened from the previous?
Cyrus more than the
Okay,
Lanterns.
or, so they,
Yeah.
let's just, even a private resident, so if they couldn't meet all the requirements, they would come to
Yeah.
us and we would give them a waiver, so, okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
What happened
All right,
with
so
the
I think-
Lanterns,
oops, I'm sorry.
Lanterns was near the aquifer for Holliston,
Oh,
for
okay.
their public water supply. So that's why I would bring something like that to the board too, cause it possibly, if it was too close, could affect another community.
Okay.
So there's, yeah.
I mean, if somebody else wants to
Judgment
volunteer to
calls.
review it, maybe draft some regulations, if not, I'm,
You
KG
need a
might be good at it.
You need a mechanism for people to track these people who said they will send you the quality results for all these waters. So we need to have a mechanism. Do you have one?
Not just wait
This-
for their, we can.
Yeah, I know you wait, but if they don't submit and
Days.
you don't remember it, then it's a problem.
We can do
But you
something.
you may have your
A
calendar,
checklist.
yeah, so see, you can-
calendar triggered up. Once they
Yeah.
give it, you put the next thing so that they did promise. I don't know whether they gave you or not so far.
And again, I wasn't on the, but just for curiosity, so did they,
Yeah.
did, like, the board say they had to have it done by a certain date, or is it just
No
that they had to
certain
do it
date,
annually?
just pre and post.
Okay,
when
I
they start
thought
up, when
they do it annually, they will do it or something like that. That's
Oh,
what I
twice,
remember.
twice a year, pre and
I,
post.
I'm not sure whether
pre and
Green-
post opening,
Yeah,
Green,
Okay.
Green
before
said
they
also,
start,
and then,
post in the end.
Cirrus also said, Green also said that they would give it, I guess, as far as I know.
Yeah, I'd have to check the
And
minutes on
wasn't
Green.
a lot of that because of, was it manganese?
One was
or
manganese, the other
or
was anything,
magnesium?
because the irrigation wells are not being tested or cleaned up for, use. And it's possible the children play around it because the
Yeah.
water fountain just comes and they run it back and forth. So we don't want them to be
They
exposed
need-
with these
if
chemicals
I
which
remember,
are there.
Lanterns needed a
That's why
waiver
they
to
said they would
continue
send
the
us the
process,
results.
to
That
keep
was the
running
reason.
it, right?
Especially
Yeah, I
in
think
an
they needed a
apartment
waiver, 'cause that
complex
was when I was
where
on the
children
board
could play.
originally.
Okay, and it's so near their camp.
Correct.
Okay.
Not only that, any
Yeah.
of these public, or big complexes where they dig
Right.
irrigation well and the they pump it out and the children play with it, then we're exposing them for water which we don't know whether it's clean or not.
Okay.
Well, I'll
So
be glad
that's
to
where we
work
asked
with
them to
Mark,
get that.
I'll take that project on if it's okay with the other members.
Yeah, if
To
that
look
needs to
at
be a
it, because I think
regulation,
it's definitely
let's put
worth
that as a regulation that every
looking at,
apartment complexes
putting-
do.
right.
Provide every year the,
Right.
quality test results.
Well,
Okay.
you know, especially with apartment complexes that have to send that in every year, so there should be a fee for reviewing it every year.
But now, you don't get that from everybody every year.
No, just as far as I know, it's Cyrus.
Okay, yeah, just, yeah, so,
Because
That-
it's so close to
like, you,
the
you
cap.
know, where you,
I mean, I think there are other towns which they charge you to renew the the permit every year, $20 or $30 like that, we could just,
again, that might be something we find that other communities do.
yeah,
You
that
know,
would
so-
at least,
I think in a case where, I guess I'm concerned if there's a deed restriction and we're kinda counting on them to remember to send it in.
Mm.
Like to the day-to-day activity, you know, within a town building, who's gonna remember, oh yeah, Cyrus didn't send it in, or,
Right.
you know,
Mhm.
Right, but I mean,
if there was a
Mark and-
concern there for something that could be in the soil
Mhm.
or in the water, right?
Right,
So the item on the agenda is the purpose, item 6D. Is the purpose of it being there for us to just talk about it, or is it?
It's
for
up
us
to the
take a
board.
vote?
If you want me to review these separately from the board meeting, I can do it.
No, I'm just curious, is it on the agenda was the
For the
goal
board's review.
to review and approve what?
For the board's review and approval.
Okay.
I
But
have to
that's-
abstain
Yeah, That's
from
why I
that
was gonna say,
perspective.
I'm
Okay,
gonna
so,
stop
yeah, I was
talking
gonna say-
until.
so, I just from my perspective, because I try to, I mean, I know I try to keep the meetings short. I thought something was going on with it, honestly, that's why it wasn't an appointment. Because I think that if we needed them to come in front of us to sit and talk to us about this for us to prove it, I would want the professionals to be in
Sure.
front of me and ask questions. So my thought would be, is not to take any action on this, we could review it if you choose to, but I would just to defer back to this original vote
Okay.
and just, because then we're not, I mean, we're just following what,
The director.
I mean, if
yeah.
everybody
Yeah.
feels, I mean, that this covers Mark, which I
Sure.
do,
Okay.
then I don't think we have to take
Yeah.
any action, and it's
Okay.
just a review that,
if
fine.
if
I
you're,
agree.
I mean, I mean,
I don't have a problem.
if you're reviewing the well regulation and going to modify or amend anything, I suggest that we also require these well drillers to provide the GPS location of the well. That was one complaint that the Eversource gave, so we don't have any.
Mhm.
So they have the
GPS coordinates
addresses, they
though?
don't know where they are. They give just a street name and the well, and they don't know where the well is. So they wanted the GPS coordinate. I
Okay.
believe the state has the GPS coordinates for some of those.
That's a good idea.
I would only suggest
Yeah,
that,
depends on the local.
that we, in a broad statement, in a very general statement, that we say that, Mark, if any requests for approval of wells comes up that you are uncomfortable approving, bring them to the board.
Sounds good.
And don't meet the requirements of the law.
Right.
And we'll,
Sounds
Okay.
perfect.
yay,
We got through it.
I know. All right, fall special town meeting. Excuse me, fall special town meeting notice.
Yes, it's just a notice that I sent to the board
Yeah.
showing the dates. I don't know if the board has anything for the special town meeting in the fall, or as we call fall special town meeting. Tara wants to make sure that I get the word special in there, because it's not a
Regular
town
meeting.
So with that said, if the board has no articles, then we'll be okay with the deadline.
Do we need to get permission to get the money out of the revolving account if you approve the?
No. If we do
I
regional.
thought there was a limit on how much we can draw in a year, isn't there?
I think there's a Tom, was
Think
the
so.
30,000, there's a
Something like that,
30,000.
20,000.
30,000 for
It's very-
food and 5,000 for tobacco.
That's what you can draw out of it.
Yep.
Yeah. So would we fall under that category if you employ another additional temporary person there? So you need to make sure if you need to get that money, more money out of it. so you
We
need
have
get
to raise
permission.
that level, and that happens at annual town meeting.
Yeah, that's an annual, but it is food for thought, I
Right.
think,
Yeah, because
Lisa will be in
if
tomorrow, I can,
we're at 29 with what you paid for the.
yeah, I can ask
Well,
town
the
council
balance-
tomorrow.
It's only what we draw in that year, I believe, and that we can't spend, I see, we can't spend over that.
We can't
That's
spend over
over
30.
that. I see what you're saying, if we start spending over 30, we're gonna run into an issue.
Even though
Correct.
it's there.
Correct.
Yeah, that, if
It
you
would've-
if you go with an article, that'll show our interest, what we are doing.
So that would be specific to food, because we have the operating budget for the nursing services,
It's a good
and we
point.
have a revolving account for food and tobacco, so it'd be for food and tobacco. Okay. Good point, KJ.
Yeah.
We'll check with town council.
I have a question for Mark, though. Did we get any information update on that replacement for tobacco agent?
Lisa and I spoke last week about starting the process, but today, in our discussion with the town manager, there was some discussion on regionalization. So, in the next week or two, I should be able to update the board by the next meeting, I hope, of what our plans are. We have, and I updated the town manager, we have around, Diane, I forget who I talked to about this, around 20 to 25 applications. Within those applications, I'd say 3 would qualify for an interview. Unfortunately, others have not had experience with tobacco control inspections, where there's only about 3 that have, so.
But we still have the person working continuously now
He
until.
resigned.
He resigned,
But he instated, his daughter, which he can't do.
Yeah,
So-
right, exactly.
So we don't, I'm acting as your tobacco agent right now.
okay, so
I was
we
gonna
have,
say, yeah.
we have the inspection being done, okay,
Hopefully at the next meeting, we'll have an update on,
okay, so. we're
Because it
not-
could go regional, it may not, depends.
well, even the same thing, we might have somebody for, like that.
But we shouldn't miss the inspection, that's what's important for us.
No,
Whether we go regional, non-regional, doesn't matter.
well, and the board's gonna be
Work needs to be
discussing,
done.
yeah, and not just inspections, but we're way over what most towns can do, but that's okay, I'm not knocking that, that's a good thing. But what I may need to do is, Tom and I may need to go out and hand out the potential changes to the regulations that need public discussion, which will be a discussion on our agenda for the next agenda.
All right, well, I was gonna say, why don't we, take a peek at the August 13th, 2019, meeting minutes? Everybody get a chance to look at them, do you need a minute to?
While looking at them, Jim Adams said that he was gonna do a post retesting, to include the board on those. Did we ever hear back on that?
No. Do you want me to follow up with them?
if you don't mind.
Yeah, I can follow up
Chair
with
the
them. Yeah, and,
superintendent's meeting.
yeah, I'll follow up with them and get to the board.
The only thing, second paragraph, Mr. Adams discussed the work that's been completed so far. This work includes the removal of all carpeting and tiles. I think they're just gonna do it, some carpeting, wasn't it?
Yeah, not everyone. They're doing
Yeah,
it
That's fine. yeah.
room by room, he said.
Yeah. So just take all out, yeah. Looks good.
Anybody have any further questions,
Um,
comments?
Not on this.
Katie?
I'm
Okay.
fine with it.
Somebody like to make a motion?
I do.
Go ahead, yeah.
I move that we approve the August 13th, 2019 board minutes as amended.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Mark, we also need to get an update on the Narcan funding that I think you said.
Waiting on,
Publicly, you need to give some updated information to people.
that should be, hopefully in the next meeting, I should know what's happening with the regional group that we're part of, that received the Narcan, and the fiscal agent who works within the Board of Health office in Framingham was to update us, so I'm waiting on her response. She's working with the Metro West Health Foundation to see if they can get that seed money, that
So we-
additional grant money. It's not additional grant money.
Well, they're doing it for next year anyhow, for the year we're in now, right?
She's trying.
But we
She's
have
working.
supply, no problem.
We have supply till the end of, middle of October, I
October.
gotta get the
Okay.
You
date,
said it
So,
expires, right?
yeah. And so the person that works for the region, our fiscal agent,
Mhm.
who works on behalf of all 4 communities, not for the Board of Health,
Mhm.
but she's housed over in Framingham. She's trying to get additional funding for at least 1 year,
Okay, all right.
Did we use all that we got?
most of it.
Do we still have
We're down
some
to
more?
about 5.
That's what he said.
If you know, if
How
it-
many did we get, Mark?
we received, let's see, it was 125 per community.
Okay.
And in each kit, there were 2 doses, so we,
So 125 two-dose kits?
2 dose kits.
So we have 5 kits left? So
Yes.
we've used 120 two-dose kits?
We either
Or gave them.
or gave
Or
them
gave
back.
them?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
Framingham and
Do
Natick,
they expire?
October of this year.
Okay.
Framingham and Natick received the same amount that Ashland and Hudson received. And when you look at the demographics as well as the populations, it just was needed more in Framingham and Natick based on that.
Yeah, well, I can
So
see,
we
they're a
started
bigger
sharing.
city, but
yeah.
I think every town is affected by this.
Oh, yeah.
By all means,
Yeah.
I
Absolutely.
I
thank
don't
you
think
for
it
saying
skipped
that.
Ashland.
No,
We have
No,
no-
it did not.
I can tell
We
you
have,
with
we
fact.
have no numbers to add on how many was used in the past
Not
couple
that I
months,
know
3
of.
months? None from.
Do they track that?
Yeah,
For
sure.
overdoses?
Used to.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, Office Berman or somebody.
I know
over
when,
there.
I don't
Ed
remember
came-
what
Maybe the
training that
hospital or
Ed did
something?
for us, he did say that, I guess the good thing to report is the numbers were down, but I don't recall what.
Okay.
Just for
Thank
information, we
God.
could probably get it for the board, just so they, I mean, just obviously numbers, but.
Yeah.
we can
Well,
get
I
it.
would imagine that if somebody's giving us 125 units, that they might wanna know how many
Well, you do
people
have,
we
Administrative.
saved, right?
Ed came in and did a presentation on that, yeah.
yeah, and I know when, because I obtained some myself, there's a form you fill out with, basically demographics, I guess you'd say, like,
Okay.
it's not, it doesn't have your information on it, but it asks questions that you
Yeah.
fill out, so that's how we
Jen-
track it for the grant.
Yeah.
So that's how
If
we.
you can get a email from Berman to update with the data that if he has, that
We
may
can,
be.
if we saved one life, I'd jump for joy.
Yeah, I agree.
So-
I would too.
Looking
You're
at
right.
next meeting, the tobacco forum, Laura, I will get you tonight the copy, and I'll send you 2 versions of it. One that has the annotations in yellow, so that we can send those to our licensees. And I just make sure that we emphasize that the only topics of discussion will be the highlighted material.
And again, this wasn't discussed with Mark, but I just came to my head. obviously Mark and Laura have been very, very, very busy the last couple of weeks, and it's just food for thought if we should maybe put off the tobacco hearing for another meeting. I mean, I'm just thinking he needs to get these regulations out to everybody. You were gonna make an appearance. I mean, that's gonna be a lot.
Yeah, I was hoping to
don't know.
put Tom on some of that too.
Okay.
Just,
I mean, it's just
I'm
food for
open to
thought
it.
for the
If-
board
if-
because
if-
it's,
if that's
give them a little
something-
bit
if
more
you
time
need
to
that
notify
time,
people. We haven't even notified anybody. I mean,
If you
respect,
need that
not in a
time,
bad
I'm
way.
if you
okay
want,
with
no,
that.
no, if you
No,
want
it's
to go in October, that's fine.
I'm
by
just-
me. October 1st, I believe, is our next meeting after that.
I also want sometime in future,
31st.
issues with vaping, because I've been reading one too many articles in paper
Mm.
about
You are correct,
vaping
Mark.
and then.
That's what it would be.
October 1st. Would that
would
be
be
better for you?
reasonable. I think that would be reasonable.
Oh, okay, that's, yeah, I'm fine with
That
that.
way we
Are you good with that?
have that.
Yeah.
You're just looking at me like I'm.
Who knows, we might have a tobacco control agent by that date too.
So you're talking about the public meeting to go over these new rules and regulations?
Yeah,
Yeah.
just make it public and get the,
We're gonna wait till the next meeting to finalize the vote on it,
No, we've already voted
the draft
To
version.
move
on the
forward.
draft.
except the highlighted areas. Is that what you just said?
No, everything
no,
was
no.
one. Like, we voted a draft
Yeah.
copy,
Yeah.
but we need to make it public and then make the final version.
Right, so what we need, before we have the forum, we have to get it to the public.
Okay,
And that's what we're saying, instead of doing, we were planning to do it next meeting, but they've been overworked, so
Yeah.
haven't had the time to
It-
get it out there.
That only gives them 2 weeks to notify all the
Mosquitoes.
tobacco establishments.
that's not gonna happen.
Yeah, so we're
That's
just
what I'm
gonna
saying
give
is-
them the extra 2 weeks.
But when you do it,
Mhm.
save the database of all tobacco establishments and then just add on to it when we get well, we won't get another one.
Right,
Right,
And
yeah,
maybe we can
yeah.
collect their
we-
emails so that,
It's not me.
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
In
there's a
fact, we're
database
gonna
of
send
all
it
of them.
out
Yeah.
electronically as well.
Yeah, I was gonna say, and I think, I mean, I
I'm
think it's
fine with
minor,
October.
I think it's minor
Yeah.
changes, I was just trying to
We're
be.
just adding
Yeah.
2 weeks to give them a little more time
Okay.
to get the information.
And then are we having just the discussion on October 1st and keep it light? It should be
Yeah.
only a half an hour, I mean, we
Yeah,
shouldn't
we'll
have a long.
We'll have the discussion on October 1st, we'll take the vote on the 15th.
Okay, all right. And then October 1st, if there's anything, we'll give maybe an hour window for the tobacco,
Yeah.
and then after that, if there's anything else, we
Yeah.
can, okay.
Okay.
And,
And Ed Hart came in today, he was a previous board member. He'd like to be invited to our next meeting to discuss our present regulations on organic pesticides and herbicides and has some ideas. So Ed would probably need 30 minutes to say, if the board so wishes, I can put him on that agenda. Is that okay?
yeah, I'm just laughing at myself, I'm
How
like,
much time do
no,
you
but
wanna give 'em?
well, I was gonna say,
Do we have a full agenda?
no, but I just, I
No.
mean,
Without the
20.
forum,
Well, that's good.
without the tobacco forum, I would be okay with it if we can make sure that it stays within time.
Okay, all right, we'll give them 30.
30
Yeah,
minutes, okay.
And, yeah, because I don't,
I think that's the important part.
What
Right.
else we
That's
have the
real
next
important
meeting?
part, Cause we have, those discussions often get very deep and we can burn an hour.
yeah, I'll,
And we can't afford an hour, but
Right, yep.
I think it's worth
Yep.
30.
okay, yeah. Right now, besides the, things that we keep moving to just keep discussing, but we don't have any scheduled appointments for the next meeting. Cause we had it for the tobacco originally, so, we could probably have the fee schedule on it again, the budget on it again.
For minutes, are we gonna have the minutes at the next meeting from the
Yes.
special meeting?
Yes.
Okay.
If there is room for taking up vaping, we could probably ask Amy to come down and speak about it. 10, 15 minutes, maybe.
Okay, I may have seen my email, I am going to go to the meeting Tuesday night, just, I don't know
Yeah,
if
Yeah,
you're
the
able to
detail.
make
with
it.
it.
Okay, good.
Mhm.
Yeah, looks like it's kind of an open house type of a deal, but, so
Yeah.
I'll
I might come.
check, maybe I'll just leave it as decisions at every turn, maybe to kind
I
of,
might pop in, yeah.
yeah, just in case one of the members come, not Amy, but maybe we can come and just give a 10-minute overview. I'm sorry?
We should post that.
If the board's not.
No, it's just Ron and I, Yeah. No.
Okay, if he pops in, as long as he doesn't.
Yeah,
set
as
up
long
I
as
a-
we-
don't talk.
Okay.
no,
I
yeah, as
know.
long as we, yeah, but that's
I
fine.
know.
It's open
It's an open
house
house,
at the
it's from
library.
5:30 to 7, but it looks like it's more like an open
It's kinda
house,
like
refreshments,
walk
kind of
around.
meet and greet, kind of like the start of the year again.
We had previously scheduled the next meeting for 7:00 because of the forum. So should we revert the next meeting back to 6 and the following one to 7?
Well, the good thing is KG doesn't have to change the meeting
That's right.
time, so we can still do 6 o'clock.
Okay.
When is
Um,
the next
I
meeting?
mean, I personally think 6 o'clock is good for me, and I'm thinking
Yeah.
it might be good for even the tobacco establishments. So, I mean, if we
So
can,
not for the next meeting when the,
we'll just keep it at 6 PM.
Well,
okay.
yeah, I mean, we could keep the meeting at 6 and have the tobacco forum at 7,
Whatever, I mean, that's fine.
yeah, so that we can still
We
have
could
the
have
meeting.
regular discussion.
That's a good idea too.
Yeah,
Yeah, so then we can have,
When's our next meeting?
the next meeting is the 17th, and then the October 1st is the meeting after.
okay, so that would keep our agenda light. We'll keep an hour agenda, and then 7 PM we'll do the public discussion. Okay. That's on the 1st.
On the first.
On the 1st,
Yeah.
okay. Got that, Mark?
October
Okay.
1st, 6 o'clock.
6 to 7.
Tobacco Forum, 7 o'clock.
Yep.
So you will talk to Amy about,
Yep, we'll see her.
And possibly Amy
if
for
she
the
has
next
more
meeting.
knowledge about,
Yeah, we'll,
on that.
check, her-
subject
yeah,
matter.
just to come and give an update on maybe even what
Just-
they're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There has been, and I think some of us have shared some information. There's a lot of news stories out there right now on vaping. I mean, the CEO of Juul said he doesn't want his kids using his product because they're dangerous. You know, so it's very interesting to see
Scary.
where it's going right now.
Yeah.
And people are blowing up their face and like all kinds of crazy stuff is going on with vaping, so.
Right.
So I just sent an article from the newspaper about a healthy kid
Yeah.
with his lungs exposed for this and
Might
that.
wanna,
They couldn't find
Yeah,
anything
they
else
couldn't
wrong?
find anything
Right,
and
right,
his roommate told him, or his friend
Right.
told him that they're
go
vaping.
back and review
And-
the video of the forum that we did at Mass Bay and see some of that information really happening. It's
Right.
pretty scary.
right. And, I mean, maybe she'll have some good insight for us,
Yeah.
maybe so. All right, well. Anybody else have anything? Mark, you all set?
I am all set.
Okay, entertain a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
7:50.